My stepdaughter hates me. I thought I would do her one nice thing, try to help her pay for her wedding, but when she did this, I decided it's time to get my revenge. My stepdaughter has always been a spoiled brat. Ever since I came into her life after marrying her mom, apparently her emotional baggage makes her hate me and act out. The emotional baggage in question being her cheating bio father. I personally don't see how that has anything to do with me. She should be happy for her mom, but still tries to make my life a living hell. She calls me insults, annoys me. Some of the most messed up things have probably been the day she crashed my car and blamed me for leaving my keys on the little hook next to the door. Another time was when she had a house party while me and my wife were out for a romantic trip. We came back to the house, ruined stuff broken everywhere, and dozens of drunk high schoolers in our home. And having to deal with police afterwards was a whole other headache. Now, I think you get it, this is the type of stuff I have to deal with on a daily basis. Now, the thing that made me break was something that happened on Christmas Day. She did something so unconceivably rash that it made my entire spirit snap. Just make me disappointed in her. It happened in the morning that was Christmas. My family and my wife's family came to our home to see how we were doing. My parents were there along with some of my siblings on my wife's end. The day was going nice, the kids have been having fun, and we're sitting watching a festive movie on the television. Grandparents were sitting with the kids and looking after them. Me and a couple of the other grown-ups were sitting at the table just talking. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but Julianna was seated with us at the table. She was talking with her uncles and aunts, acting normal, thankfully, and she was being good. I noticed that she kept turning to the Christmas tree, probably wanting to open her present. I whispered to her to relax and wait a bit until everyone finishes their breakfast and the kids finish their movie. She nodded, and then a few minutes later stood up and shouted, "It's present time." The family all looked at her, some laughed, but others were unamused at her disrespectfulness. I motioned to her to sit back down, but she just flipped me off and sat down under the tree. My mom looked at me and I could tell she was mad. She wanted me to be respected, not demand like this. I caved and just motioned that it was okay to her. Julianna, who was now surrounded by children looking for their presents, sat with her legs crossed, holding on to a pink present, the one I bought for her. It was a brand new iPhone, the latest model in her favorite color, rose gold. Or at least I thought it was. As she opened the present, she held the phone turning in her hand and looked at it intently. I waited for her to be happy or smile, but she stood up and threw the phone to the floor. Everyone was shocked as she started jumping on it full force and cracked it each hit. I ran over, grabbing her, moving her away from the pitiful pile of metal, wiring, and glass laid on the wood flooring. I was angry. I lost my cool, of course, and began shouting at her. "What in the world is your problem, you spoiled brat? You're 24. For crying out loud, I thought you would at least know how to behave by now. Then you pull this crap in front of everyone. Can you not act normal for once in your freaking life?" I left out years of pent-up anger and one loud shout, and everyone looked at me in fear in the children's eyes, who were just playing with their new toys, and disappointment in my parents. My mom looked at me and just shook her head. I let go of Julianna, dropping my head in shame. I should have just kept quiet, I thought, as ice drilled me into ripping me apart. Just then, a hand flew out of nowhere. Julianna had slapped me so hard in the face, I stumbled back a bit. After the blow, I just looked at her in pain. "I hate you, you pig. Why can't you just die?" She screamed, running to the corridor and up the stairs, her footsteps making thuds each step. When she stomped down on each step, I could hear it again and again. She made me seem like the bad guy and gotten away with it. The family looked at me with concealed eyes. I picked up the broken, discarded pieces and put them in the trash as I walked out of the house, leaving with my car. I slept in my car that night in the cold, and the disappointment that I felt after that whole thing just made me want to disappear. But I came home, and when I saw Julianna, she just brushed it off, not even apologizing for what she's done. She did not care in the slightest. She just acted like nothing would happen, and nothing happened at all. My wife looked on at me with sadness. She did not know who to side with, and I didn't force her to act like I was right. I let her decide and think of it completely fairly. To my horror, she told me to sleep on the couch the next following night, making me feel even more separate from my family. The cold was the worst part. At least the family cat kept me company on those few nights. Well, fast forward to a few months later. Julianna had met this guy at her workplace. She said he was a good man and they've been dating for a while. She introduced us to the family. Guys, we had a dinner together. He talked about his aspirations and dreams about having a business in the future and settling down with Julianna, having kids. Well, throughout the talk, he seemed like a decent young man, and I gave them my blessing to get married, of course, seeing as she was very happy. We told them if they get engaged, we will help them pick out a house. The next few days, she had already moved out. They put down a deposit for a 3-bedroom house up the street from ours. They got engaged, and they planned to marry in June, saying that they just need to save up some money first, to plan the whole thing. They were in debt after paying the deposit, and most of it had come out of Julianna's pocket. But she didn't care. She was madly in love. Then June rolled around, and a tired, messy Julianna came to visit us one Saturday morning. And she told us her sob story, saying that her fiancé had wasted a lot of his money gambling, and it's taken a toll on their savings account, and she had reserved the wedding hall a few months ago, and the next reservation would take too long, so she needed money to pay for it right now. She cried, bawling her eyes out, and my wife nodded to just give it to her. I obliged, but right when I was writing the check, a menacing idea came into my mind. Instead of using my account, which had a decent amount of cash in it, I wrote an old account that had no money in it. It's been closed for years. Essentially making the check bounce last minute, hopefully while she was in the middle of the ceremony, so that chaos would ensure when she was unable to explain why she tried scamming the venue. I snickered while writing the check, and my wife and Julianna both looked confused, but after handing her the check, she thanked me and left on her merry way in a hurry. When I sat back down watching a game on TV, I felt a little sorry for what was about to happen, but thought otherwise after remembering all the crap she's done to me over the years. My evil plan, was going to unfold in the next few days. I couldn't wait for it. During the next few days, Julianna went out with her mom looking for a wedding dress, cake, and other things she needed to set up for her big day. She looked so happy in her new white dress, and the cake design was absolutely beautiful. I took her fiancé suit shopping and bought him a nice black suit. During this time, we talked for a while, and I made it clear, and I could tell, he knew that I didn't like him. The day has arrived now. Julianna's world was about to come crashing down like a meteorite up in the sky. Well, I woke up with some pep in my step and got into the new black suit, and my wife wore a red dress that looked so nice on her. We left the house to the venue and arrived at a huge glass building. There was a stage at the front, seats on either side of the walkway. We sat down in the huge gathering. Nearly 100 people were there. I got up shortly after to walk Julianna down the aisle, her fiancé standing at the end, waiting with the priest while everyone watched. Julianna locked arms with me and walked. We were nearly at the end of the aisle when the door flung open and angry small men burst in. One started shouting, "Everyone get out of here now! This venue's not been paid for!" He turned to Julianna, who was confused. "You tricked me. I want you and all your friends out of here now, or I'll call the police." He just continued, pointing his finger at Julianna. I looked at him and feigned ignorance. I'm sure you're mistaken, sir. I'm Julianna's stepdad. Can you please double check that she paid, as she told me she sent the check a couple days ago? I said. The man grew more angry. Oh, the check she paid was fraudulent. It bounced last minute. I lost a lot of money thanks to your stepdaughter. The man said. He breathed a sigh of disappointment. Just then, Julianna's fiancé came down and started shouting at me. Hey man, I thought you were paying, bro. He looked at me and I laughed and looked at my stepdaughter. Why would I ever do such a thing? I said to the man, looking at me infuriated, and I simply shrugged my shoulders, sat down, and let the argument ensue. The manager and her fiancé were berating each other, the fiancé demanding proof that the check was from Julianna and that the check had indeed bounced. Julianna just stood, lost in her own thoughts. She looked at the guests, who were mad and were all staring at the three. The argument got pretty bad, and the manager left the room, stomping the floor on his way out and slamming the door. What the hell was that? One of the guests said as they threw their arms in the air and began leaving the place. Julianna tried to calm them down by offering drinks, but as she handed a glass of champagne to one of her close friends, all she got in return was it being thrown back at her. The room was now completely chaotic. Some people took some cake while they left, and others berated the bride and groom. My wife just looked at me in disappointment. We sat in silence as everyone filled the rooms, until they emptied out one by one. Julianna and her fiancé stood in the middle of the aisle. A few minutes later, we heard sirens and the screeching of police cars pulling up to the front. Then the doors opened and the manager was followed by a bunch of police officers. They walked in, down the hall, and told Julianna her Miranda rights, and then arrest her and her fiancé. The cop cars left and me and my wife went home. Well, that drive home was intense. And my wife did not seem to want to talk, so I gave her time to think and took it in what happened. We got home and I left the house, giving my wife some privacy and quiet to visit Julianna, if she wanted to, or just sit at home. I came home late at night and went to sleep on the couch. Before laying down, I noticed there was a plate of small sandwiches and freshly squeezed orange juice prepared for me on the dining table, which made me smile at my wife's kindness. The following day, we talked about it. The conversation went like this. Why did you do it? She said, visibly upset. Honey, I wanted revenge. That's the only way I can say it completely truthfully. I just wanted revenge and to teach her a lesson. I responded, not regretting my actions at all. She deserved it. Every little thing that she has done to me is far worse than a little prison time ought to make up for it, eh? I said, getting angrier. Okay. As long as she learns her lesson, maybe it's for the best. My wife said, trusting me. Not wanting to argue too long, I was shocked and happy that she had sided with me. I hugged her and said thank you. We went back to our usual life, waiting for the day of Julianna's court date. Well, the day arrived and we had to attend as her family. The defendant, Julianna, sat at her seat. She looked different, more quiet and a bit rough around the edges. She could not pay for a lawyer, so she had a public defendant. The hearing, well, it went by quite fast, and after the judge saw the bank statements, the venue owner shared it. It was a cut-and-close case and ended in favor of the victim in the wedding venue. She had to go to prison for 2 years, as she could not pay for the money, and she was slapped with a $15,000 fine. Along with her fiancé, who also got 2 years as well. His trial happened afterwards. The whole situation was insane. And overwhelmed Julianna, she didn't even speak once during the trial. When it was over, she was taken away by the officers and went back to her cell. Her mother and me visited her and took some cake and books to her just to keep her spirits high. Hopefully she'll get some taken off of the time if she behaves in prison. When she spoke through the glass wall, I took the chance to act friendly because the call would be obviously monitored. Then, when I was leaving, and mouthed the words, I hope you learned your lesson not to mess with me, and smiled as her face dropped into an open frown and tears ran down her cheeks. We walked out, and her mother, who stood by the door, greeted me as we left. So now Julianna spends her time behind bars. It's been around 60 days since she's been incarcerated. We visit her ever so often, taking her sweets and candies and other nice treats. While we wait for her to be released, when she does come home, I hope that she'll be reformed and act like a nice young lady. Me and my wife have talked about what to do, and we decided to support her if she complies to our rules. I haven't heard much from her fiancé, only that as still in prison, the lawyer told us that Julianna will probably be released in about 3 months. On probation, as she's been doing well just reading books, being more religious, and an all-around working hard person at her jobs. So guys, let me know what you think about Julianna. Did she deserve this type of treatment, to have the bounce check and made it look like she was up to criminal activity? I know that she's done some bad things in her past, but what did Julianna do to deserve this? Drop in the comment section down below and let me know. Who was the biggest a-hole of the story? Was it OP, who decided to ruin Julianna's life, or was it Julianna, who was basically an a-hole for her entire life? Let me know your thoughts on that, guys. Drop them down below. And our second and final story is titled, Am I the a-hole for taking my son home when my sister gave him something he was allergic to? I'm 32, female, have a son who's 6, who has allergies. One of these allergies is food-based, so I'm very careful when preparing his meals. His allergies are moderate, so I don't need an EpiPen, but I still carry one just to be sure. My sister, 38, has 3 kids of her own who were blessed with no allergies, so they can eat whatever they please. Her oldest is 13, had a birthday party not long ago, but I had a work-related appointment, so I dropped my son off so he could attend. My sister is well aware of his allergies, and I asked if she would be serving food that was okay for him to eat. She assured me all was well, but I now know it wasn't. When I returned to pick him up, he was covered in rashes and crying. I immediately realized it's an allergic reaction, acting up, and called my sister to the side. I asked if his food had been cross-contaminated, but she straight up told me she directly gave him what he was allergic to. I nearly flipped out and had to go outside to calm down. She defended her actions by saying I was just babying him and that he needed to learn to outgrow his allergy. She continued by saying she gave her boys everything, so that's why they were stronger and healthier than my son. I admitted, I screamed at her and said some things that I'm not proud of, but she angrily told me that it was her son's birthday and it wasn't right that my son was getting special food from everyone else. I pointed out, are you dumb? His allergies are nothing for him to feel special about. And she countered by saying if I'm so bothered by his itching, I should give him the EpiPen so it could stop. I immediately left in my car, and when I looked back and saw that my son had cut himself all over from scratching, I cried. She called me in the middle of the night, angrily demanded that I apologize to her and her son for ruining his party, but I hung up. Am I the a-hole, guys? Quick little update added in. For reading all the comments, I decided to press charges against my sister. Also, I did not include this in my post, but my son has an egg allergy, so I felt at fault for taking him to a party with pastries. But I got a lot of encouraging words, so I now know that I'm at fault. Thank you to all the people that made me realize that I had to get something done, because if I've done something like this to one of her boys, she would retaliate immediately. I don't want to go into full details, but the reason I don't report what she did was because she's in custody battle with her husband for the children, and I didn't want this to be another reason against her. However, I can't ignore it any longer, and although I don't want her to lose her children, I have to protect mine. She did this to herself, and luckily my son seems fine right now, but I'll take him by the pediatrician later if I see any changes. Okay, so here's a couple comments, then a similar situation story. These allergy deniers are something else. She poisoned the poor kid, not fit to be a caretaker. Comment 2 says, she could have killed that poor child. EpiPens are just to get you to the ER. It's not a cure, and they don't always work. That's when the similar situation comment came into play. Yeah, I had to explain that to my mother-in-law. Her other granddaughter has a severe peanut allergy. She never knew that if her granddaughter has an allergic reaction, they need to go to the hospital ASAP. Alright guys, so let me know down in the comments below, have you ever been in a similar situation? Thank you so much for joining in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.